When you think about it, islands aren't supposed to just, disappear. But that's exactly what happened in the Caspian Sea. NASA satellites watched a brand new island emerge only to see it vanish completely within a year, like a ghost. And this wasn't a glitch or a mirage. It was real land, formed by a violent mud volcano, then swallowed back into the sea like it never existed. So what's going on here? The ghost tale started in early 2023, off the coast of Azerbaijan. There's this place called the Kumani Bank, a so-called mud volcano in the Caspian Sea, about 15 miles out. It has erupted multiple times, and each time, this led to a fascinating story, the one we're learning about now. When it erupted recently, it spewed a chaotic mix of mud, gas, and rock into the sea. But this time, NASA's satellites were there to catch it all on camera. In November 2022, the volcano's peak was still hidden beneath the waves. Just 4 months later, a brand new island appeared, stretching about 1,300 feet across. And then, in December 2024, it was gone, completely erased from the map. NASA said it had retreated from view like an apparition. The same thing happened in 1861, 1950, and several times since. But how does it work? Well, most people think of volcanoes as fiery mountains that spew molten lava. But mud volcanoes, like the Kumani Bank, are a completely different kind. They don't erupt with lava. Instead, they blast out thick, bubbling mud, sometimes mixed with methane gas, and that's a stinker. Scientists have found over 1,100 of them on land and shallow water, and there may be over 10,000 more hiding deep in the ocean. Now, these things are strange, dangerous, and still barely understood, and Azerbaijan is just a goldmine for them. Over 300 mud volcanoes have been counted on land and offshore, more than anywhere else on Earth. So, why so many? Because the Arabian and Eurasian tectonic plates collide under Azerbaijan, pushing against each other. This creates crazy pressure. Deep underground, water gets heated, but instead of melting rock, it mixes with minerals to create thick, pressurized mud. Tectonic forces squeeze this mud upward through faults and cracks in the Earth's crust. And when the pressure becomes too much, well, boom, it suddenly bursts, blasting mud, rock, and gas into the air. And sometimes these eruptions create temporary islands, like the one NASA just saw. But there's another crazy part. Mud volcanoes aren't just messy, they can be terrifyingly dangerous. Some mud volcanoes are small puddles just a few feet across. But others? Well, they're absolute monsters. The tallest known mud volcano is about 2,300 feet high, nearly as tall as the Burj Khalifa skyscraper. The widest one is 6 miles across, big enough to swallow an entire city. Which brings us to the weirdest part. In some cases, they don't just spew mud, they ignite, sending massive fireballs into the sky. A horrible fountain of mud, gas, and flames towering hundreds of feet high. One of those happened in 2001, and it burned for days. That's why they often lead to horrifying catastrophes. In 2006, there was the Elusive mud volcano disaster in Indonesia. It erupted out of nowhere in the middle of a populated area. And what's even crazier, the mud flow never stopped. It's still erupting today. It buried tons of villages under the mud. Over 24,000 people lost their homes, and scientists predicted that this horror would continue for 20 more years. At first, no one knew what caused it. Some think it was just an earthquake 2 days later. Others blame drilling operations nearby. A gas company was exploring right before the eruption happened. Well, whatever the reason, it has turned entire towns into ghostly wastelands. And they're not just dangerous for us. They're a disaster to the planet in general. They just love to leak greenhouse gases. They constantly leak methane, one of the most powerful gases that warms up our entire planet. These guys release between 30 and 140 million tons of methane per year. That's up to 9% of all natural methane emissions, and more than some entire countries produce. Well, that's the estimate at least. Since most mud volcanoes are deep underwater, we still don't know how much gas is escaping into the ocean and the atmosphere. Many of them lie on continental slopes, too. That means they're holding huge amounts of trapped methane. If they suddenly decide to go wild, yeah, that won't be good for anyone. Some past eruptions in Azerbaijan have been insane as well. A few mud volcanoes there blasted flames so high that pilots could see them from airplanes. On July 4, 2021, a mud volcano on Undersea Island erupted like a true monster. The flames shot up 1,600 feet into the sky, that's taller than the Empire State Building. The fireball was visible from miles away. Even the capital of the country, Baku, saw it light up the night sky. Luckily, no oil platforms nearby were damaged, but it really scared people for a moment. Another one, also near Baku, erupted in 2018 so massively it shook the ground for miles. Luckily, the Kumani Bank isn't such a monster, well, compared to those other examples. In 1950, the Kumani Bank erupted again, creating a horrifying pillar of fire about 330 feet high. It burned for 15 minutes. This created a large oval island as well, and it disappeared just about half a year later. Then another powerful disaster took place in 1959. For almost 20 minutes, flame reached the heights of about 650 feet, like about 2 statues of Liberty, including the base. The eruption brought up breccia, a type of rock made of broken fragments, and this time, a newly formed island lasted for 3 more years before eroding away. The thing is, those islands are never built to last. Mud volcano islands aren't made of solid rock, they're fragile piles of sediment. The Caspian Sea's waves and currents slowly eat away at them, washing it back into the ocean bit by bit. NASA isn't sure if the 2023 Kumani Bank eruption was as fire as that, but it didn't last that long either. All that remained was a faint shadow of land, barely peeking above the water. But will it rise again? Well, probably. Just don't get too excited. The Caspian Sea might create more ghost islands in the future, only to erase them again, as if they never existed. Now, interestingly, not all mud volcanoes are disasters waiting to happen. Some are actually ancient holy sites. Deep in Balochistan, Pakistan, stands Chandragupta, a sacred, constantly bubbling mud volcano. Hindu pilgrims believe it's a gateway to the deities. They visit it as part of their journey to the nearby temple. Before entering the temple, they tossed offerings into the mud pool, coconuts, rice, and sometimes even money. This volcano seems safe. People prayed to it for centuries. It never erupts, just slowly breathes like a living being. But even though it's sacred, it's still dangerous. The land around it is unstable, and eruptions can happen without warning. What's even crazier is that we might not be alone in having these bizarre formations. Scientists think that Mars may have mud volcanoes too. NASA has recently spotted strange dome-like creatures on the red planet. That could be ancient Martian mud volcanoes. And if that's the case, that's just another clue into an entire pile of evidence that Mars used to have liquid water. If they investigate it, they might even find some signs of life there. Well, maybe. They also think that Europa, Jupiter's icy moon, might have a version of these guys, except instead of mud, they erupt slushy water and ice. Now, the worst part about those guys is that we still don't fully understand them. Scientists can't predict how much methane they really release, why some of them erupt while others continue to sleep, and what they can tell us about life on other planets. We barely scratched the surface, literally. The deepest mud volcanoes are thousands of feet under the ocean. That's why many of them are completely unstudied right now. But perhaps they'll tell us their stories one day.
It's 2010. You're in the Japanese waters of the Pacific Ocean, about 745 miles south of Tokyo, and very close to the island of Iwo Jima. The sky is clear. There are almost no waves. A heavy, low rumble comes from somewhere deep under the sea. It scares away all the flying gulls. And then it gets quiet. Too quiet. It seems that even light waves don't dare to make a sound. Suddenly, a small bubble rises to the surface of the water. Then, thousands of air bubbles start moving up, one after another. The water begins to boil and heat up. Its temperature is so high that you can cook eggs or pasta in here. The boiling area grows to the size of a stadium. A huge amount of steam is released into the air. You can see an outline of some huge object through the boiling water. Then, everything stops. The water cools. the amount of bubbles goes down, and the surface of the ocean becomes calm again. That year, an underwater volcano erupted at that specific location. Fortunately, it didn't bring any serious consequences. In August 2021, the eruption repeated. But this time, everything wasn't limited to the bubbling water. The Japanese Coast Guard reported strong volcanic activity in the region. Hot steam and gases came out of the water and rose into the air to a height of 10 miles, which is about twice the height of Mount Everest. The huge awakened volcano began to slowly lift to the surface. If you took a helicopter ride above this place, you'd see more and more land coming out of the water. This is not just a volcano, it's a whole island in the shape of a horseshoe. And this is just the beginning. Seismologists say this island is the tip of a huge volcano. It fills the sky with smoke and ash. The air temperature is rising. Scientists continue to monitor the situation. They believe the volcano can completely get out of the water. Nobody knows what consequences this may have. This isn't the first island that has appeared in the waters of Japan. Underwater volcanoes have erupted several times over the past century. One of the most surprising cases occurred in 2013. That year, a small piece of land was formed next to the already existing island. The underwater volcano that emerged from the water began to grow slowly. At some moment, it connected to the island. After 2 years, the area of this island increased by 12 times compared to the original size. Smoke is always pouring out of this place, and its surface is filled with red-hot lava flows. The volcano is unstable and isn't going to calm down. Such phenomena occur not only off the coast of Japan. In the 1960s, a volcano awoke on the southern coast of Iceland. For 3 whole years, it was coming to the surface and had formed an island by 1967. They called it Surtsey. Unlike the Japanese islands, this is where the volcanic eruptions ended. Now the island is one of the most inaccessible places on the planet. Only a few scientists in the world have permission to walk around this place. They want to learn how the plant and animal life of the island are formed without human intervention. This is a unique event, and here's why. Underwater volcanoes differ in their behavior from land volcanoes. They don't explode and don't release lava flows upwards. A huge amount of water above them creates high pressure. As soon as the magma gets out, the water immediately lowers it to the seafloor. Underwater eruptions don't normally cause any changes on the ocean surface. So, millions of gallons of lava sink to the bottom, cool down, and solidify around the volcano. This lava forms a thick layer of Earth's rock. To make an island appear on the surface, an underwater volcano needs a lot of magma. The next eruption creates another thick layer. Millions of years pass, and passive lava flows form mountains. Constant eruptions increase the height of the seabed. Layer by layer, the cooled lava rises higher and higher, and then, one day, it appears on the surface in the form of an island. Often, underwater volcanoes don't reach the surface and fall asleep forever. Such volcanoes are called seamounts. The tectonic activity also affects the formation of islands. The volcano has a source of magma that comes from the mantle of the planet. The tectonic plate is moving, and a volcano is placed on it. So the plate can lead the volcano away from the source of magma. When a volcano rises, it can simply move aside and no longer erupt. From the outside, the volcanic islands look like an apocalypse, lava spraying in different directions, smog and ash filling the sky. But in fact, volcanoes are not about destruction, but the creation of new life. Lava is any hot metal, but the natural lava flowing out of volcanoes is called magma. When it appears on the surface of the ground, various gases and acids instantly evaporate from it, and magma becomes lava. But underground, it's magma. These molten metals contain trace elements of almost all chemical substances that exist in nature. They enrich the land they're flowing in. Ash is also filled with many different elements. The lava hardens, the ash settles, and this creates favorable conditions for the appearance of a rich ecosystem. It can take millions of years to develop, though. The simplest bacteria appear. They feed on chemical elements coming from the volcano. When you have favorable conditions for bacteria, you get favorable conditions for bigger life forms. Birds flying by also help to develop the new ecosystem. They build nests on the island, bring tree seeds, and plant spores from the continents and other islands. All this enriches life on the volcano. Volcanoes are isolated places, so unique species of animals, insects, and bacteria can appear only there and can't be found anywhere else on the planet. However, if the volcano wakes up, it can also destroy the ecosystem. The entire island can be covered with ash and simply lose all vegetation. But then, on the scorched ground, life can appear again. Hundreds of islands around the world appeared because of the eruptions of underwater volcanoes. Hawaii, Indonesia, and Iceland have them on their territory. Imagine that people settled on a similar volcanic island and built a city there. And one day, the volcano woke up. It once happened 200 miles south of Tokyo. People built a beautiful town right in the center of an active volcano on the island of Aogashima. In May 1785, the catastrophe began. That day was sunny, and no one could imagine what tragedy was approaching them. At some point, thousands of birds took to the air and flew away from the island. Then, the ground began to shake. A heavy, low sound came out of the town depths. Streams of smoke were coming out of the crater of a green volcano. The volcano was throwing dirt, large stones, and various debris into the sky. The disaster lasted for several weeks. Since then, more than 200 years have passed, and the volcano has never woken up again. The town was rebuilt after the disaster. Now, this place is so great, people don't want to leave, despite the risk of a new eruption. More and more residents are coming to the island. There are many thermal springs, and the waters around the island are rich in fish. But the volcano may wake up at any moment. Fortunately, meteorological and seismological services monitor the situation. A lake can also form inside the volcano, but you shouldn't swim in it. In Indonesia, on the island of Java, there's a volcano with a crater inside. It's filled with turquoise water. The magma inside the volcano consists of many molten metals and chemical compounds, and the lake gets these substances. The volcano emits sulfur dioxide gases that combine with the metallic lake. This gives the water its strong acidity and turquoise color. The steam coming from the lake is acid. When it combines with air, it ignites. This is visible at night. Sulfur accumulations flare up and illuminate everything around.
Fraser Island sits off the coast of sunny Queensland, Australia. But don't fall for its beauty. It's home to the most dangerous beach in the world. There's nowhere on the island to seek medical attention. If you do run into danger, you're on your own. Dingo attacks are super common here. If you don't know what a dingo is, it looks like an adorable dog. But beware, this wild breed is extremely dangerous. And the dingo's gnashing teeth aren't the only thing to be scared of. The seas around the island are swimming with great white sharks. There's jellyfish in the water too. Fraser Island is home to some of the world's most dangerous kinds, including the Portuguese bluebottle. One sting from its venomous tentacle is enough to take down an adult human. Even if you manage to avoid the creatures on the island, the sea itself is perilous. The waters are incredibly rough and have powerful riptides. These are strong currents that will pull you away from the shore. And remember, there are no lifeguards to come to your rescue if you get in trouble. Even the sand is dangerous. Car rollovers in the thick dunes happen all the time. It's definitely best to swap your car for a dune buggy. Travelers also often drive down the dunes straight into the lakes below. But the lakes are incredibly shallow, which is not very safe. Fraser Island is also known for its beautiful lookout points, but you'll need to watch your step. You might feel on top of the world, but stay well away from the edges as jagged rocks and crashing waves line the shore below. There's an island in Brazil known as Snake Island, which is equally dangerous. I wonder what the hazard could be here. It's home to thousands of golden lancehead vipers, which are one of the most venomous snakes on the planet. They grow to over 20 inches long, and their fast-acting venom melts the flesh from around their bites. There are around 4,000 snakes on the tiny 106-acre isle. Snake Island has become so dangerous that the Brazilian authorities had to ban everyone from going there. For years, the only human inhabitants to brave the island were a lighthouse keeper and his family. But local legend says that one night a group of snakes crawled in through a window to attack, and the family was never seen again. Known as the gas mask town, the island of Miyakijima is not one to visit in a hurry. It's home to a fiery, active volcano that has erupted several times over the past few years. There were several massive eruptions leading to the spread of a highly poisonous gas across the island. Residents are now required to carry gas masks at all times, and a terrifying alarm blares across the island whenever the poison levels get too high. The island is also in the middle of the Devil's Sea. Ships mysteriously vanish in the area, and experts have no idea why. The North Sentinel Island is home to a remote and unwelcoming tribe. They lived alone on the island without any modern technology or contact with the outside world for over 60,000 years. And that's just the way they like it. They've been known to fire arrows at anyone who attempts to enter the island. There are many stories of people visiting the island, and they are never seen again. It's not ghoulish ghosts or slithering snakes that you have to worry about on the Caribbean island of Saba. It's hurricanes. The tiny island has been hit by more severe hurricanes than anywhere in the world over the last 150 years. There have even been 7 tropical cyclones, which is an intense circular storm. The winds in these storms can reach 254 kilometers an hour. Try standing up in that. You'll also struggle to find a pilot who'll even land on the island. It's incredibly dangerous not because of the winds, but because it's home to the shortest runway in the world. It's only 440 yards long. 2 huge rocky ridges surround the runway, so there's no room for mistakes. The Kilauea beaches of Hawaii used to be one of the most dangerous in the world. The Kilauea volcano has been almost consistently erupting for the past 35 years, spewing red-hot lava into the surrounding waters. The water temperatures have even passed boiling point as a result of the lava. Happily, it's no longer active. While the island of Bikini Atoll might sound like the perfect summer vacation destination, it's most certainly not. The problem is that this place has dangerously high radiation levels, and the locals had to leave it. Although the island was declared safe in the 90s, its original inhabitants have refused to return. The lack of fishing in the area has also led to a massive increase in sharks who swim the waters in search of their next meal. Strangely, the corals and reefs are thriving. From the distance, Ramree Island looks idyllic. White sand, swaying palms. But beware. They say thousands of hungry saltwater crocodiles used to lurk there, ready to strike at any time. The exact number of those animals was unknown, and some scientists claim that there are quite a few of them right now. I'd stay well clear of the island though. I don't really feel like becoming crocodile food. Skeleton Coast in Namibia is appropriately named as the harsh landscape and lack of water make life almost impossible. Whale carcasses, turtle shells, and elephant rib cages litter the shore. If that isn't bad enough, lions and hyenas patrol the beach in search of their next meal. The surrounding waters are just as dangerous, as they are home to 11 different species of shark. Many sailors have become lost on this coast and have never been seen again. Cape Tribulation in Australia also lives up to its name as it is packed, full of dangers. Swimmers have to wear special stinger suits because the water is teeming with stinging jellyfish. Saltwater crocodiles also hide in the water, but they don't make a suit to keep you safe from those. It's not just the jellyfish that sting. The area is covered in stinging trees. The trees have jagged leaves that give the crocs' teeth a run for their money. On land, there's angry cassowary birds. There are flightless birds that are the same size as an ostrich. They have sharp talons that can easily slice through skin. The Utterkleiv beach in Norway is one of the best places to see the northern lights, but you'll be lucky if you survive more than one night there. The seas surrounding the island can reach 46 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's just in the summer. It probably feels like swimming in ice cream. For years, Gansby Beach has remained a habitat for the most dangerous creatures on the planet. Sharks are particular fans of its waters, and the coastal stretch is known as the Great White Shark Capital. The sharks are attracted to the 60,000 sea lions that flock to the beach every year. Not just shark food, wild sea lions can be unpredictable and aggressive towards humans. Comoro Islands are the worst vacation destination for those who don't really like mosquitoes. The place is swarming with the little guys. Locals say all the water on the island must be contaminated because of them. So they like to sterilize water before drinking, making ice, and even brushing their teeth. If you're really into coconuts, there's one place you should probably go to grab some. I'm talking Danger Island. Yep, it's the real name of one of the islands in the Chagos archipelago. It shouldn't scare you off though. The major problem it has is parking. I mean, safe anchorage for those who come there. Finally, while it may sound dreamy, you're probably going to want to avoid the beaches of the Amazon. Sharp-toothed red-bellied piranhas, anacondas, and electric eels are just some of the beach's regular residents. It has one of the widest varieties of animal species on the planet, including the Amazonian giant centipede, which has a poisonous bite. It's not just the animals of the Amazon that you have to watch out for. Strychnos and curare are the two Amazonian plants that are super poisonous.
In 2020, there are islands on our planet that have not been touched by the hand of modern man, not even his fingers. Nature in these places has remained unchanged for thousands of years. What if people lived on one of these islands? They wouldn't know about civilization's progressive benefits or have seen a modern person. This island actually exists, and traveling to it is unlawful and involves many dangers. North Sentinel Island is located in India in the Bay of Bengal. If you want to get there, you won't succeed, because any travel to this place is prohibited by law since the middle of the 20th century. The Indian Coast Guard prevents any attempts to get there, but the law is not the only thing that will stop you on the way. Imagine sailing a small boat towards this island. The waters are crystal clear. You spot passing fish and beautiful coral reefs. Ahead, you can see the island's shape. It looks like paradise. You're so impressed by the beautiful view of this place that you don't notice a few dots appearing on the shore. As you sail closer, something whizzes past you and falls into the water. It's an arrow. The next arrow hits the hull of the boat. The dots on the shore are people, the local tribe Sentinelese. They stand with spears and bows and shout something at you in a strange language. They make it clear with gestures that you should get out of this place. They throw spears at you and fire arrows. Well, that's another clue, huh? Fortunately, you managed to get away. Sentinelese guards their island in such an aggressive way. They don't invite anyone to the island and voluntarily isolate themselves from the rest of the world. Even when a helicopter flew to North Sentinel, the tribe threw spears and arrows at it. The authorities forbid approaching this island because it's unsafe for tourists, you think, and to protect the islanders from the dangers of modern man. People can easily bring disease to the island and infect the inhabitants. The locals may not have immunity to even the flu or a simple cold. Despite all the prohibitions and threats to life, many people have tried to get there. They wanted to make friends with the tribe, and sometimes they did. In 1880, Officer Maurice Vidal Portman went to the island shore and found that it was surrounded by a coral reef and limestone. On the island, there was a noble soil, which is ideal for growing coconut palms. Portman found several villages on the island, but didn't visit the locals and left this green paradise. Often researchers gave the islanders gifts in the form of caught fish. The locals accepted it, asked for more, but still did not allow anyone to approach their home. Making friends with the natives was also tricky because they communicate in a complicated language. But over several decades, modern people managed to establish contact. In 1991, one of the locals approached a boat that sailed to the island and took the gift. In the same year, the islanders boarded a boat and accepted bags of coconuts from the anthropology team. This was one of the last positive interactions with the tribe. For centuries, sentinels have lived on their own, far from civilization, and India's government wants this to continue. So there. Another island is also beautiful but much more unsafe. One mysterious small green island is found 25 miles off the coast of Brazil. It also represents paradise. Traces of modern man are present here in the form of a lighthouse, but there are no people inside. Sometimes the Coast Guard comes to the lighthouse to check whether everything is okay and whether there are no strangers on the island. People are not allowed on this island for their own good. The only inhabitants of this place are snakes. The island is home to about 4,000 species of these reptiles. They hang on trees and slither on the ground. Oh boy. They have no enemies and feed on birds that visit the island for recreation during a long flight. Oops. But the worst thing is that these snakes are among the most venomous in the world. The golden lancehead snake is a unique species that lives only in this place. Snake Island was once part of Brazil's mainland, but 10,000 years ago, the sea level rose and separated this place, turning it into an island. Animals were completely isolated here, and for thousands of years, snakes became the top of the food chain. Because there was no other prey on the island except birds, evolution gave these snakes a potent venom to catch prey with a single bite. Well, moving on. Next is a terrifying island located in the Xochimilco Canal, 11 miles from Mexico City. There are no venomous animals or a hostile local tribe, and the island is not forbidden to visit. But most likely, you'll want to leave as soon as you arrive. Creepy dolls of various sizes are suspended in trees and old buildings all over the island. In the 50s, one of the residents of Mexico City moved alone to this island and began to hang it with dolls. For decades, he decorated this place, although it's difficult to call it decoration. He found dolls and dumps and canals around the island. The hanging dolls looked rather strange and attracted many tourists. But over time, the dolls got older. They were covered with moss, turned green, and rotted. The dolls' faces have deformed and taken eerie shapes. But the worst thing is that the locals say they've seen these dolls come to life at night. Ew. Now for Bouvet Island, one of the most mysterious islands in the world. This island is the most isolated place in the world. It's located in the South Atlantic Ocean, 1,600 miles away from South Africa and 1,100 miles from Antarctica. A perfect location for an introvert. It's challenging to reach the island, and typically you can only do so from some large ships passing by. Almost the entire island is covered by a glacier, and in its center lies a volcanic crater. The only permanent residents of the island are penguins and seals. The island was discovered by a French explorer in 1739. However, the coordinates of this place were not recorded. For the next 69 years, the island was hidden. In the early 19th century, it was finally rediscovered. But a human foot came ashore only in 1927. Hopefully, it was still attached to some explorer. In the mid-20th century, people decided to build a weather station there. As soon as the researchers sailed to the island, they discovered something strange. They found a lifeboat in a small lagoon among the seals. It was in good condition and could still sail. The researchers found oars and an empty copper buoyancy tank not far from the boat. There were no markings or emblems on the boat. It seemed that a ship was wrecked and the sailors escaped by this boat. However, no human tracks were found on the island. Who owned this boat and what happened to those who sailed on it remains a mystery. Now, let's end our trip with an island that is completely safe and even pleasant. What a surprise! Pig Beach is an island located in the Bahamas. This is not the official name of this place, but it's called that because of the local swimming pigs. The island is inhabited by these animals. They sunbathe on the beach, walk through the jungle, and beg for food from tourists. But the cool thing is, they can all swim really well. Cute pink and brown piglets splash in the water and grunt, begging for food. Thanks to feeding by tourists and caring locals, these animals manage to survive on the island. You can stay at a hotel on a nearby island and visit the pigs by boat. Nobody knows precisely where the pigs came from. According to one legend, the pigs survived a shipwreck and swam to this island. You can find several cats and goats there as well. Animal Farm, anyone? There's a mysterious island that appears and disappears like magic. Just like Schrödinger's cat, this Schrödinger's Island exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Officially, it's called Sandy Island, and it once appeared in maps, but it was never there in real life. Australian scientists decided to solve the mystery once and for all by embarking on an adventure to find this elusive archipelago. But when they reached the coordinates, all they found was endless blue waves. It's like the island was playing a game of hide-and-seek with them. This story goes back to 1876. A whaling ship was crossing the area and reported an island. Whoever saw it said it was over 15 miles long north to south and around 3 miles wide, about the size of Manhattan, so not so tiny at all. But every time researchers went to visit the area, they found nothing. So in 1974, an official mission from New Caledonia declared that Sandy Island was simply not a thing and excluded it from all maps. People went on with their lives until they noticed that the island was appearing on Google Earth as a black blob. In 2012, another Australian expedition went out to check out the area to get some explanations. They had to write a eulogy for the long-lost island and explain what could have created this mess. For starters, mapping technology wasn't at its peak back in the 1900s. It was easy to get the coordinates wrong. Then there was the fact that the area is big on volcanic activities. It's likely that volcanic lava cooled down and created a raft of some kind. Let's say that the whaling ship went by, saw the volcanic raft, and thought it was land from a distance. But hey, it's just a guess. Humans have ventured far and wide across the globe, and it may have seemed at some point that we discovered each and every nook of our planet. But when Mount Lico popped up on Google Earth, scientists were overcome with excitement. This hidden gem in northern Mozambique is no ordinary rainforest. It's nestled inside a volcano. Determined to confirm the existence of this mysterious forest, experts assembled a team of top-notch scientists and specialists from around the world. The journey to Mount Lico was no walk in the park, with a daunting vertical rock climb standing between them and the forest. But after 6 years of planning and preparation, they were ready for the challenge. Once they got there, they saw it was even better than they imagined. The place was like a perfectly tended garden. The forest sounded unique and different from other rainforests. There were some insanely huge caterpillars that looked dangerous. And they even found ancient pots and evidence of an untouched human ecosystem. Ooh. Terra incognita means unknown land. And one of the largest unknown territories being uncovered today is the land beneath Antarctica's ice sheets. Below the snowy surface, there is an entirely new world of canyons, waterways, and lakes, which are now being mapped. One can't help but wonder, is there really liquid water below Antarctica's frozen surface? Yep. Water can exist without freezing due to pressure. The liquid water is the result of Earth's warm interior, and that's how we get things such as Lake Vostok. Now, you can't see it, but Lake Vostok is right here. Located in East Antarctica, it lies beneath 2.5 miles of thick ice. This huge lake is about 4,800 square miles. Humans could only discover it with the help of some top-notch technologies like seismic soundings and ice-penetrating radars. According to these scientists, it's likely that the lake has been there for up to 15 million years. Bhutan is on the map for, among other things, being the happiest country in all of Asia. But it kept a hidden gem for all these years, one of the world's tallest unclimbed mountains, Kunkar Pansum. Bhutan is enmeshed in the glorious Himalayan mountains. That's why the climbing community was beyond excited when they discovered an untouched mountain. Imagine being the first person to climb an unexplored peak. That would probably guarantee you a spot in the Guinness World Records for sure. The mountain has been untouched because of a Bhutanese law. For locals, the mountain peak is a sacred site, shrouded in mystery and legends. One of their beliefs is that the sacredness of climbing a mountain lies not in reaching its peak, but in truly communing with the mountain and enjoying the process. We got to admit, that is a bit of a newsflash for Westerners. If you're ever in the state of New York, make sure you check out the Aglo General Store. You'll have to drive somewhere around the Catskills to find a beautiful, grand, big nothing. Aglo is one of America's most famous paper towns, aka a fake town. But this case is different from Sandy Island. Aglo Town never existed, and it wasn't a mistake. You see, there's an old copyright practice amongst map makers. They add in paper towns so they can know when someone is simply copy-pasting their work. What they didn't expect is that this would get completely out of hand. Some say that one day a guy picked up a map at a gas station that had Aglo Town marked in it. The person decided to open a store over there and named it Aglo General Store. Some say the guy who opened the store faced a lawsuit from the map makers. Anyways, it only lasted enough years to become a national joke. Americans drove from all over the U.S. to get a picture of the town's fake welcome sign. And then we've got Burmeha Island, located in the Gulf of Mexico. This funky island appeared on many maps of the 16th and 17th centuries. It was probably drawn by Spanish explorers. Sure, the exact location varied from map to map, and its name sometimes appeared as Burmeha, but its existence was certain enough. The Burmeha Island was last seen in a 1921 Mexican map, and then, poof, it dropped out of the horizon altogether. People started talking and wondering, did the island sink? Was it destroyed? In 2009, 3 official investigations happened to search for the island. They used high-tech technologies to scour the Mexican seabed, but Burmeha was nowhere. Researchers had multiple guesses on what it could be. Let's delve on one of these ideas. The idea was probably made up by old-day explorers to mislead their enemies in search of land and gold. Well, that seems plausible. Now, let's take a look at Rio de Janeiro. Once, the city was filled with informal territories. These places are known as slums or favelas. They're like mini-cities inside the big city. Some favelas are known to be underprivileged territories, where dwellers don't get the same urban perks as other citizens, such as the sewage system and garbage pickups. These slums grew so quickly that the government didn't have time to keep track of their developments. So today, it's usually the dwellers themselves that name the streets and make do with whatever they have at their disposal. One of the biggest slums in Brazil is located in Rio de Janeiro, the so-called Hacienda, and it was only recognized as a neighborhood by the local government in the 1990s. Our own ocean floor is less mapped than Venus, Mars, and the Moon. In fact, 95% of our oceans are unexplored. Strange, right? We do have the available technology, which is mainly sonar soundings, sending wave sounds to the ocean bed and registering what they hear back. One of the main advantages of mapping the seabed more thoroughly would be to get more insight to marine hazards such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Plus, there are so many unidentified marine life. This could give us a great insight into preservation and discovering the true dynamics of our marine ecosystems.
You're chilling in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. A friend calls you up. Hey, I'm here too. Meet me in Maui. Great, but how do you get there? Your first thought is probably to take a ferry, but that's impossible. Hawaii is a pretty unique place. It's the most expensive state to live in. It has its own official language besides English. And it's the only American state made up entirely of islands. Hawaii has a total of 137 islands. 8 are the main ones, but only 6 are open to tourists. And the distance between those islands is probably bigger than you'd expect. For example, traveling from Oahu to the Big Island is around 185 miles, which is about the same distance as Chicago to Indianapolis. You might be surprised that you can't make that trip by boat. In fact, the only ferry system that actually takes passengers in Hawaii runs between Maui and Lanai. That's it. So your only option is to travel between islands is by plane. Honestly, it's a little surprising, especially considering how many people visit Hawaii every year. Tourism pretty much drives their economy, and in the first 8 months of 2024 alone, over 6 million people visited its beautiful beaches. Knowing that, we would expect Hawaii to set up a good ferry system to make it easier for visitors to get around. Just like in Greece. This would probably boost tourism even more, bringing more money to the state. But believe me, authorities and private companies also know that. In fact, they've already tried it. Ferries were a big way of getting around in Hawaii from the 19th century up until the 1950s. Since then, there have been a few attempts to bring back a ferry service, but unfortunately, they have all failed. One of the biggest attempts was the Hawaii Super Ferry, which aimed to provide a fast, affordable boat service between islands. It could carry almost 900 passengers and even allow them to bring their own cars along. The trial run started in 2007, and people were excited, but it turned into a big fiasco. A bunch of legal and environmental issues came up, like concerns about the impact on marine life, especially whales. The courts decided the ferry didn't go through the proper environmental reviews, and that caused a lot of trouble. By 2009, after tons of protests and setbacks, they had to shut it down. If a project like this comes up again, it will probably fail one more time. And there are a few reasons why it's almost impossible to set up a regular ferry system there. Let's start by talking about Hawaii's rough waters. They are deep and wild. Take the Alenoiaha Channel, for example. It's a 30-mile stretch that separates Maui from the Big Island. Its name means Great Billow Smashing Channel, and it lives up to that. It's over 6,000 feet deep, making it one of the most dangerous stretches of water on Earth. The wind there is also super strong, the fastest in Hawaii's coastal waters. But it's not any easier in the rest of the archipelago. The whole region gets hit by storms from the Pacific up north, sending big waves crashing into the islands and making the waters rough and unpredictable. Swells can come from 3, 4, or even more directions, making the sea feel really choppy. Someone who's not used to taking ferry boats would definitely find that, well, uncomfortable, to say the least. To deal with rough seas like this, the ferries have to be really big and strong. But that also makes them more expensive and harder to run than the ones in places like Alaska or Washington State. Another reason it's so tough to set up this system today has to do with marine life. A big ship moving through the shallower waters when docking could really damage the local ecosystem. And there's also the problem that the sea routes are also the migration paths of many sea animals, like humpback whales and spinner dolphins. Not to mention, ferry services can make it easier to spread harmful plants and animals, what experts call invasive species. See, Hawaii's ecosystem is super unique because it's been isolated out in the middle of the Pacific. When we talk about plants and animals that are native to Hawaii, we mean they got there on their own, no humans involved. They arrived with the help of waves, wind, or even birds flying over. But events like these are super rare, so for over 70 million years, their plants and animals didn't have to deal with outside competition. That's made them really fragile. So, when new species get brought in by us, it can be a big problem, and they could end up harming the environment. Hawaii's already been battling invasive species like fire ants, coqui frogs, and Meconium, a fast-growing plant from South America that takes over native forests. People there worry that ferries, which carry cars and cargo between islands, could accidentally spread these invaders even more. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the video, the long distances between their lands don't really help either. For example, if you were to travel from Oahu to the Big Island of Hawaii by boat, it would take around 30 hours, and that's without any stops. The same trip by plane takes about 50 minutes. Ferries that cover long distances are much more expensive, so they need a much bigger demand to make them profitable. On top of that, the state doesn't really have the infrastructure, like enough ports and terminals to support the operations. So setting up new routes is pretty much out of the question. Airplanes, on the other hand, are a different story. The air travel industry in Hawaii is already well established and super competitive. That means flying is still the most practical option in Hawaii. Planes are quick, they don't make you seasick, and are pretty affordable, usually costing around $100 for a round trip. Okay, but what do the locals think about all this? Well, apparently, there isn't a huge demand for residents to commute between the islands all that often. Oahu is the busiest island in Hawaii, with about 70% of the state's population living there. It is where Honolulu, the capital, is located, and where most of the state's business happens. So, people from the other islands usually come over for a specific doctor's appointment or to catch a big concert. And that might happen once or twice a year, no more than that. So, even if people could choose between taking a ferry and a plane for these special occasions, most of them would probably still prefer flying. There are plenty of options between the main island airports. Planes usually start flying around 5 in the morning, and there are flights available every hour until the last one, which is usually at 9 in the evening. If you've been dreaming of going to this paradisiacal place but are worried about spending too much on plane tickets, I have some tips for you. First off, keep in mind that visiting all the main islands in 5 days or less is way too ambitious. So, if you don't have much time to spend there, think about your priorities. Each of the 6 islands open to tourists has its own vibe and activities. But you don't need to visit them all in one trip, and you can save some money by sticking to fewer islands. You can still explore the diversity of the islands by picking 2 that offer a nice contrast to each other. For example, while Oahu has that bustling city energy, Kauai has a much more relaxed vibe. Also, flights in the morning are usually cheaper, and it might be better to fly on a weekday rather than the weekend, although the price difference isn't usually huge. Hopefully these tips will save you some cash while still having an unforgettable island hopping adventure in Hawaii. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who's also dreaming of exploring these amazing islands.
Imagine you're a movie director looking for beautiful landscapes to shoot a movie. You walk along the picturesque Paraná River and find a perfectly round island in its delta. It's slightly larger than a soccer field. You come back a few days later and see that the island has changed its position. It's moved a little to the side and spun around its axis. This is what happened to Argentinian director Sergio Newspiller in 2016. He discovered an island that constantly moves around its axis. He called it the Eye. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, you'll see that it's similar to a slowly moving eye. It's like nature itself is looking at you. The doctor forgot about his initial movie idea and decided to make a documentary about this island. You can find the Eye in the northeastern part of Argentina, or you can open Google Maps and type El Hoyo to see it. No one had known much about this place before the director found it. Perhaps there are many such moving islands on the planet. If you look at satellite images of this area, you can see other similar pieces of land inside lakes, but they're not so round and don't rotate. Surprisingly, scientists haven't yet solved the secret of the bizarre island. The most popular theory says that underground wells create strong water flows and change the current that pushes the island from side to side. When the Eye collides with the ground, it bounces off like a ball, causing parts of its muddy shores to break off. But not everyone looks for a scientific explanation for this natural phenomenon. Some locals believe that the island is part of some kind of technology created by space civilizations. Ooh. Our next stop is the smallest island in the world. No one can even step on it because of its size. So, here's Vancouver Island in the Canadian province of British Columbia. Fairy Lake is located here. Look at the water. You may not notice the island at first. Technically, it's not even an island. It's just a piece of log sticking out of the water. This log is covered with moss and grass. But the most incredible thing is that a tiny Douglas fir grows on this piece of wood. The photo of this tree has won many awards and became famous worldwide. It shows how desperately nature can strive for survival. Every day, many tourists sail around this island and get inspiration from it. The next island looks ominous and lifeless. It's the perfect place to build a hut and write horror novels using an old typewriter. The place is called Ball's Pyramid. It's located in the waters of Australia in the Tasman Sea. You can see this colossal fin sticking out of the water from afar. This is a sharp stone ridge with a height of 1,800 feet, almost twice the size of the Eiffel Tower, in the center of an uninhabited volcanic island. It's dangerous to approach the place and step ashore because of its slippery stone surface. Scientists come here with special equipment and probably some good boots with traction. The purpose of their visits is a mystery that lies in the heart of the ridge. It was first discovered in 1788. The navigators who found it considered the island lifeless, and so it was believed for more than 200 years. But then, in 2001, people decided to examine the place again. A group of scientists arrived there and found one of the rarest insects in the world. At the height of more than 100 feet, a small bush grew. A colony of land lobsters, also called walking sausages, was hiding there. These are critters from the family of stick insects. They look pretty creepy, since each of them is about 6 inches in size, which is the average size of a sausage. The bodies of these six-paw beetles are covered with a hard brown shell. Scientists found 27 insects, and their population keeps growing. These creatures were considered extinct at the beginning of the 20th century. Scientists still don't know how these beetles got to this remote, harsh place and how they managed to survive there. The next unusual place is probably the most isolated and one of the most mysterious in the world. Welcome to Bouvet Island, located in the southern Atlantic Ocean, 1,600 miles from the coast of South Africa and 1,100 miles from Antarctica. It's possible to get there only if some big ship is passing by. An ordinary motorboat won't be able to reach this place because of the cold temperature and icebergs. The island is completely covered with ice and has a volcano crater in its center. You won't find anyone living there except penguins and seals. One French explorer discovered the island in 1739, but then its coordinates were lost. People found this place again only at the beginning of the 19th century. But people set foot on the shore of this island for the first time only in 1927. Then, closer to the 50s, they decided to build a weather station on it. Researchers came there and found something strange on the icy surface of the island. And it wasn't due to the penguins and seals. It was a lifeboat lying in a small lagoon among the seals. It was in good condition. Not far from the boat, they found oars and an empty copper container. Perhaps some ship went down nearby, and the survivors reached the island in this boat. But the researchers found no traces of people. Until now, this boat remains a big mystery. How about visiting an island that doesn't exist? It's in the South Pacific Ocean near Australia and New Caledonia. It's called Sandy Island. It was first discovered in 1876. Researchers began putting it on maps at the beginning of the 20th century. But when people arrived at the specified coordinates, they found no island. So by 1970, people had removed it from all the maps released at that time. Then, in 2012, Sandy Island appeared again, this time on Google Maps. The researchers came there, but still found nothing. Maybe it had gone underwater. With the help of echolocation devices, they explored the seabed, but didn't notice any signs of an island. They found out that it appeared on the maps because of human error when printed cards were being transferred to digital ones. The mistake was quickly corrected, but a trace of it remained. If you enter these coordinates into Google Maps, you'll see a mysterious black spot in the middle of the ocean. And that's precisely where I am narrating this story. Nah. How did people discover it in 1876? Most likely it was an underwater volcano that woke up and spewed some magma out. In the cold water, it solidified and turned into pumice. So people on that ship must have noticed huge floating pieces of volcanic rock and mistook them for an island. Our next island could be a new continent, but turned into nothing. At the beginning of the 20th century, famous marine explorer Robert Peary, the first in history to reach the North Pole, went on an expedition to the northernmost Canadian island, Ellesmere. He was on the shore, looking through his binoculars at the ocean. In the distance, amid the white snow, he noticed the white peaks of a giant island stretching across the horizon. The traveler didn't have enough food and fuel to get there and check out this land. He wrote the coordinates in his diary and went back to the mainland. Together with other researchers, they concluded that he had found not just an island, but a new continent. A few years later, Robert Peary organized a new expedition to that place. But this time, he couldn't find the mysterious icy land. The ship stayed in cold waters for several days, drifting from side to side. The crew was running out of food and fuel. They were about to go back, but then they noticed those snowy peaks again. The joy of discovery was quickly replaced by disappointment. Those peaks were just fog. Under the influence of cold air and the sun's rays, the fog looked like an island at a certain angle. When the ship approached it, the island dissolved like a mirage. Oh well. The Amazon River, the boat, and dense jungle on both sides. All is silent. Only the engine is revving, and you look around nervously under the earnest gaze of the Peruvian guide. Suddenly, the man smiles and points ahead. This is it. You've finally arrived at Iquitos. The city is hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest. On one side, Iquitos is surrounded by water, and on the other lies thick, impenetrable rainforest as far as the eye can see, making this city extremely difficult to reach. First, you had to fly to Peru's capital, Lima, a vibrant coastal city. From there, you traveled by bus through Peru's vast jagged mountains before being plunged into the heart of the Amazon rainforest. 3 days into this bus journey, you reached a small town where the road suddenly stopped. At over 140 square miles, Iquitos is the largest continental city in the world that cannot be reached by road. You're still over 200 miles away from Iquitos, so from here you take a boat ride along the hot, humid Amazon River before finally reaching the remote city 5 days after you left Lima. When you arrive in the city, you notice many of the houses are built on tall stilts. This is because, in the springtime, the river surrounding Iquitos swells up, submerging parts of the city in water. For this, Iquitos has been nicknamed the Venice of the Amazon. The stilted houses are tall enough to avoid the murky waters of the Amazon River. You hear loud buzzing coming from all around the city. It sounds like a gang of bikers have arrived. In reality, these are motocarrios. There are very few cars in Iquitos. Instead, they have motorcycles with small passenger cabins attached to them. There are around 45,000 of these things whizzing around Iquitos, making the city very noisy. Your trip to the most isolated places has just begun. So, you head to Norway and arrive in the capital city Oslo. Immediately, you hop on another plane. After a 3-hour flight, you land at the world's northernmost public airport, Longyearbyen. You step off the plane to see a small and colorful town enclosed by snow-topped mountains. There's no settlement further to the north than this. Longyearbyen translates to the Long Year Town, named after its American founder, coal miner John Longyear. You take a walk along the coast of the small town. The water is a beautiful crystal blue. You decide to dip your toe in to test it out. Ow! Bad idea. The average temperature of the water here is 32 degrees, making it ice cold. In the distance, you can make out a fuzzy white creature. It's a polar bear. In fact, it's a group of them. In Longyearbyen, polar bears famously outnumber humans. Around 3,000 of these animals populate the area compared to the human population of 2,300. Finally, the sun sets. You grab a blanket and sit back to take in the stunning view of the northern lights. Now, imagine you're walking in the scorching heat across Egypt's Great Sand Sea. You've been walking for miles, hours, days even, dreaming of water, greenery, and a place to rest, when suddenly you come across a small settlement with olive groves, palm trees, and even freshwater springs. This isn't a heat-induced mirage. It's the Siwa Oasis, an Egyptian city of 23,000 people and a miracle of nature. You travel here by flying to Egypt's capital, Cairo, and then embarking on a lengthy and desolate bus ride across the desert. When you finally spot some greenery amongst the sand, you have reached the Siwa Oasis. After refreshing yourself in the cool waters of the springs, you explore the city further and come across ancient ruins. This city has existed since 10,000 BCE, and many historical remnants can still be found there today. Amongst these ruins, you notice there are newer buildings. These are where the modern-day Siwi people live. You spend some time with the Siwi, a friendly and unique community of Egyptians. They tell you all about their city. The Siwa Oasis is located in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and due to its harsh climate, it's one of the most remote cities in the world. You notice how dry the air is and how scorching the sun feels. Reaching highs of 118 degrees Fahrenheit, this heat makes the Siwa Oasis a difficult place to live. It's time to travel to a more balanced climate. You head northeast and arrive in Russia's capital, Moscow. From there, you take a flight east again, traveling further and further across Russia until you're closer to Alaska than to Moscow. You've reached the city of Petropavlovsk, which translates to City of Peter and Paul. The first thing you see are giant mountains surrounding the city, cutting it off from the rest of the world. These mountains are in fact volcanoes. In this far eastern part of Russia, there are more than 300 volcanoes, including 29 active ones. These volcanoes stop any roads from reaching Petropavlovsk. The city depends on flights and boats to import supplies. You turn away from the volcanoes to stare out at the blue, shimmering ocean. The water looks nice, so you head down to the beach where a crowd of sea lions are sunbathing along the sand. Petropavlovsk is home to incredibly diverse wildlife. Just off the shore, you can see a whale fin poking out of the water. You explore the city's diverse landscape. You go to one of the city's ski resorts and spend the day on the slopes. Then you hike up a rocky path to the base of one of the city's many volcanoes. Finally, it's time to relax on a boat tour around the island to see the city's famous Three Brothers rock formation. Feeling inspired, you travel to another volcanic land, Chile's Easter Island. The island doesn't have a harbor and only one airline flies to the remote land, so you travel an entire day to Santiago, Chile. Then you climb aboard a small plane to fly to Easter Island. You walk among the high cliffs of the barren island and come across its famous monuments. These are giant, mysterious statues of human heads. They're called moai and were carved by the local people around 800 years ago. You inspect the earth beneath your feet. It looks and feels very dry. Easter Island consists of 3 ancient volcanoes. The volcanic soil makes it very difficult to grow crops or vegetation. Some of the city's trees were cleared hundreds of years ago to make way for the stone monuments, giving the island the empty look it has today. You embark on a boat ride 1,100 miles west from Easter Island. You reach a small green land floating in the Pacific Ocean. This is Pitcairn Island. You might recall that this place played a major role in the mutiny on the Bounty. You come down from the boat and begin your journey to reach Adamstown, the center of the island where its 43 inhabitants live. To reach Adamstown, you hike the Hill of Difficulty, a steep and rocky 200-foot climb to the top of the island. Now that you've finally made it here, you can explore the diverse and unique nature of the land. Pitcairn Island is home to the largest marine reserve in the world. You take a snorkeling trip and swim alongside all kinds of exotic fish. You explore vibrant coral reefs and even catch sight of a rare humpback whale. Dreaming of the great days of the old Wild West, you decide to travel to Supai, Arizona. To get to this Native American settlement and fragment of the past, you drive along America's famous Route 66. You stop, seemingly in the middle of nowhere with only desert land as far as the eye can see. Then you follow an 8-mile walking trail to reach Supai. You hike down into the Grand Canyon, almost 3,000 feet deep. You come across a stunning waterfall spilling over the cliffs of the canyon. This is Havasu Falls, a popular tourist spot, famous for its vivid blue-green water. After a further mile's hike, you finally reach Supai. Over 200 members of the Havasupai Indian tribe reside in the small town. It's often referred to as the most remote town in the United States. To your left, you see several mules making their way across town with packages on their backs. Because no roads lead to this small settlement, mail is delivered by a mule train. Without it, it would take the average mail carrier a 16-hour hike to complete this route. You walk around the area and come across many more towering blue waterfalls. The untouched nature and great views of the Grand Canyon make the long hike worthwhile. After a beautiful sunset, nighttime falls, and there are no lights for miles. The land is lit up by the countless stars shining overhead.
You're on a ship when you notice some water foaming nearby. It looks as if a huge vessel just sunk there, but you don't see any debris. Steam is rising over the water, and large bubbles appear on the surface. In a couple of minutes, you see a small piece of land appear right in front of your eyes. It's releasing flames and lava. Millions of gallons of water evaporate in the mouth of the volcano. Frightened, you get away from this place. For the next 3 years, the small island covered with volcanoes will slowly be emerging from the water. Every day, it'll erupt and fill the sky with black ash. When the ash settles, it'll get mixed with the water and form the shore. This eruption lasted 3 years, and finally, by 1967, the island of Surtsey on the southern coast of Iceland was fully formed. Surtsey is one of the few islands that have emerged from the depths to the surface of the sea. But it's almost impossible to get here. The island has a unique ecological system, and scientists want to find out how it's going to develop without human influence. Only a few people from all over the world have permission to walk around on the island. For many decades, people's minds have been occupied with the mystery of Easter Island, a remote piece of volcanic soil far away in the Pacific Ocean. But our planet hosts thousands of such lonely islands. What is so peculiar about this one? The mystery is concealed not in the island itself, but giant stone statues covering it. Who created the world-famous huge stone heads? Did they serve any specific purpose? Rapa Nui, which is the name given to Easter Island by its first inhabitants, is the territory of Chile and is situated in the southern Pacific Ocean. And it is so far away that you can easily consider it one of the most distant places on the world map. The only transport that can take you there is a plane. If you want to get to this destination point, you will need to spend 5 hours on board, flying from Santiago to Easter Island. The statues carry the name Moai. They started to be carved at some point between the 13th and 15th centuries. Rapa Nui statues are easily recognized thanks to their peculiar faces. They have long noses, wide chins, rectangular ears, heavy brows, and deeply set eyes. It is quite curious that the nostrils curl in the way fish hooks do. Firstly, people thought that the statues were made up only by their heads. But surprisingly, it turned out that there are full bodies that are attached to the heads. It was discovered during excavations in May 2012. The bodies were just hidden underground. Still, the heads of the statues, visible from the first site, make up 3/8 of each statue's size. As for the arms, they were carved against the bodies, resting in different positions. Most statues, 834 out of 887, were carved from the material called tuff, which is, in fact, compressed volcanic ash. Curiously, all the statues except one faced inland. It means their backs are turned to the ocean. Perhaps the reason for that was the belief that the statues were the protectors of the villagers. That's why they overlooked the settlement. The only statues not fitting into this pattern can be found at Ahu Akivi, a sacred place for the people of Rapa Nui. People keep wondering how the statues of such a huge weight have been distributed all around the island. What's more, in 1722, visitors found a small local population between 1,500 and 3,000 people. How could it correlate with the hundreds of statues on the island? The mystery surrounding the way Rapa Nui people could move the statues challenged the researchers, not letting them back off. In the 1980s, some of them decided to recreate a statue and check the possibility of moving it around. Several decades passed, and another group of American scientists proved that the islanders could tie ropes encircling the huge statues and move them with a walking motion. They backed up their theory with practice, moving a full-size replica using this method. Actually, their idea can explain why Rapa Nui folklore states that the statues were walking with the help of magic. It explains the way the statues were transported to their designated places. Our next stop is Brazil, far from the center of Sao Paulo. That's where you can find an island that's almost impossible to get to, but if you succeed, you're unlikely to leave it. It's called Snake Island. There's no other place on the planet with such a high concentration of snakes. They are the only owners of the island since no other animals can survive among them. The golden lancehead. They are one of the most venomous species in the world. Their venom is very powerful and fast-acting. If you let this reptile bite a raw piece of meat, the place around the bite will start to melt. Count me out. Imagine you're on this island and the snakes don't bite you. The most interesting thing you can find there is an old lighthouse. It's hidden in the dense foliage of trees. People lived on the island a long time ago. Rumor has it that the last keepers were in the lighthouse when the snakes broke in. No one has lived there ever since. How these unique snakes appeared on the island is still a mystery. The most popular legend claims that a pirate came there a long time ago. He hid a treasure somewhere on the island. Then, he left the snakes in the spot where the chest was hidden. The pirate hoped the reptiles would scare people away from his gold coins and jewelry. Since then, a few snakes have managed to increase their population thousands of times. And some of them, reportedly, are wearing jewelry. No, not really. Even if you wanted to get to the island for some reason, the patrol services would stop you. Only a few people in special protective suits can get there to conduct scientific research. Susie gets here on a small boat. As soon as she steps on the ground, she turns on the live broadcast on her phone. She records dolls hanging on trees all over the island. They have different clothes, different sizes, and faces. There are about a dozen creepy toys on every tree. Rain and hot sun deform the toys' faces. They are covered with moss and greenery and have taken eerily scary forms. There are rumors they come to life at night. Wanna check? One of the subscribers writes, "No problem," Susie agrees. The sun is going down below the horizon. Darkness falls on the forest. Susie is wandering among the trees. The moon lights her way. She makes a fire to get warm. At this moment, she hears a strange sound. She notices some movement out of the corner of her eye. The phone turns off. Susie looks up and sees one of the dolls, lit up by the flames, is turning its head in her direction. Susie screams and runs away from this place. Of course, the doll didn't move. You can notice a little bird sitting behind the toy's head. A few days later, Susie found out that one of the Mexico City locals had moved to the island in the 50s and filled it with toys. He collected dolls from landfills and canals around the island. He spent several days decorating every tree. In the beginning, it looked strange and exciting for tourists. Then, as the dolls began to age and rot, this place became more attractive for people. There are several legends about the reasons for his obsession. Okay, Susie's had enough of these mysteries and creepy places. Now she wants to admire something majestic that was created by nature. She arrives in California's Sequoia National Park, where the most giant trees in the world grow. She's looking with an open mouth at the biggest tree in the world, a giant sequoia. Its name is General Sherman, and it's about 2,000 years old. The volume of this tree is almost half the size of an Olympic swimming pool. Despite its age, it's not the oldest one. There are redwoods in the park that appeared 3,000 years ago. And the tallest tree in the world grows here, in California. It's a redwood that belongs to the sequoia family. It's called Hyperion. This is 1/3 of the Eiffel Tower's height. Just imagine what kind of view you can see from the tree's top. Now Susie is on the island of Madagascar. She's going to see unique baobab trees. They look like something has ripped them out of the ground, turned them upside down, and shoved them back in. Baobabs are some of the most beautiful trees in the world. Most of them are here in the Alley of Baobabs, but you can also find them in Australia and South Africa. Their tree trunks resemble sponges. They expand and absorb moisture during the rainy season. Elephants like to drink it. They tear off and chew the trunk's parts to quench their thirst. At night, flowers bloom on the baobabs. They smell like sour milk and attract bats. But the most interesting thing is that the baobab doesn't dry out and doesn't fall like other trees after the end of its life. It crumbles, settles, and leaves a pile of pieces on the ground.
Welcome to Starbucks Island in the middle of the Pacific near French Polynesia. Even if the name brings to mind a strong coffee smell, you will find no frappuccino there. The island is uninhabited. It's also pretty tiny, just 5.5 miles east to west and about 2 miles north to south. The island is so small, New York City could fit in 18 such islands. Seems like there can be zero interesting things, but Google Maps have something to surprise you. A couple of months ago, there was a viral TikTok video about a weird saucer-shaped object found on Google Maps on Starbucks Island. The video racked up over 5 million views in 2 days. The creepiest part is that there's a long streak traversing almost the whole island. It looks as if someone had to brake with all their might, but failed, and it resulted in a crash of that saucer-looking vehicle. Could that be another possible proof that we aren't alone in the universe, and someone tried to visit us and couldn't drive very well? All these speculations are blood-chilling, and the users believe no one knew the true story behind those traces and the saucer. Little did they know that back in 2009, a group of explorers visited the deserted island. They made a couple of videos that were uploaded to the net. Thing is, the island didn't used to be that deserted. In the 19th century, Starbucks Island was used for guano mining. A tiny clarification here. Guano is bird and bat droppings. Yeah, droppings mining doesn't sound quite convincing, but guano is rich in phosphates, and phosphates have a lot of uses and can be used as fertilizers. So, since there were some people on that island, they had to construct a sort of temporary settlement, which they did. Now, back to Google Maps. Do you see that angle? Right. The satellite picture can be compared to the pictures and videos made in 2009 by the explorers. Another point proving that this weird object has a terrestrial origin is that there are some trees on the island, which is bizarre. These trees aren't native to coral limestone terrain, and they were definitely planted by people. Mystery solved. The saucer-shaped object is not an extraterrestrial vehicle, but what remains from a settlement. And the traces stretched out across the island? Who knows? But it's definitely nothing out of this world. Another TikTok user claimed they saw zombies on Google Maps. Let's see if this one is true. First off, the video scared over 1 million people who watched it. This TikTok starts with a view from afar, and as the user zooms in, we understand we're in Finland. Then we see an inscription. Alright, I surrender. Finnish viewers, help me out here. The next thing we see is a low-quality Google Street View image, and that shot sends shivers down my spine. It looks like a mass gathering of people, but they don't look quite alive. The image looks foggy and bewildering. Are these real zombies? Sure thing they're not. First off, let's deal with the inscription. It translates to English as "a quiet people's facial artwork by this person." So, he is a Finnish dancer and choreographer and intended the silent people artwork to be part of his performance. But now it's an independent art piece. Fun fact, the silent people figures get changed twice a year, in the fall and at the beginning of the summer. They get all the clothes from donations. Bang! Another myth debunked. Bright side 2, TikTok myths 0. Right, now take a look at that pic. Anything weird you've noticed? Right, it's a 3-legged girl. The satellite picture was taken in Croatia, but there's nothing to worry about. These are nothing but Google Maps issues. Thing is, the technology used for Google Maps purposes has a curious algorithm. Each object gets photographed several times, and then the resulting photos are stitched together to achieve the most accurate image. In most cases, it works, but sometimes it seems like the technology tries too hard, and it results in extra details and sometimes extra limbs people have in the photo. And if we're going to have a 3-legged race, then I'd bet on her. There's nothing that can escape the all-seeing satellite eye, right? On September 20th, 2022, a TikTok user posted a video about a plane found underwater on Google Earth app. The plane was found off the coast of Crooked Island in the Bahamas, not far away from Colonel Hill Airport. Now, let's see if that's true. The first thing we should keep in mind is that even Google Earth Help themselves admit the fact that the pic found in the app may be the result of several photos, either satellite or aerial, taken on different days and even in different months. The result of stitching might sometimes be a bit unpredictable. Remember the three-legged girl? How could we forget? So, as you may have already guessed, this photo is nothing but stitching. The area with that plane was photographed multiple times in 2004 and 2005, then it was photographed 8 times in 2015 and a couple of times later. The most probable reason for this photo being on Google Earth is that these are the 2015 shots combined together. They say the reticulated python is the largest snake in the world and can reach a whopping 20 feet in length. There's a record of one such python found in 1912 that reached 32 feet in length. However, users found an even more staggering snake on Google Earth. On March 24, 2022, another mind-blowing video was posted on TikTok. The video got over 200,000 likes. Imagine the views! This time, the user claimed that a mega-skeleton of the extinct Titanoboa was found on Google Maps somewhere in France. It was hard to judge from the image, but the skeleton was estimated to be about 100 feet long and could have certainly been the longest snake that ever existed, if the snakes had had such a skeleton in reality. So it's the number one reason why this one is not a snake. You see, snakes have somewhat thinner ribs, and the skeleton in the picture looks way more massive. Another curious thing about this skeleton is that it turned out to be made of steel. See what I'm driving at? It's not a real skeleton, but a stunning 425-foot-long art installation. It's called this French name, which means ocean snake in French. The installation was created by a Chinese artist, Huang Yongping, and it's free to visit. The cool thing about this installation is that it only appears with tides, so it looks like a real archaeological excavation. Well, the artist made a monkey out of millions of users. If you ever travel to France, you can go check this extraordinary piece of art. It's located in this place, not far away from that place. Sometimes, Google Maps shows something that never existed. Meet Sandy Island. For a long time, it was believed to be located near New Caledonia in the eastern Coral Sea. It all started when Captain James Cook included it in the charts back in 1774. He never visited it, but it was later included in several more charts as a precaution against reefs. At the time, it was standard practice. Plus, the area was, and is still, swarming with pumice sea rafts. These are the masses left after an underwater volcanic eruption, so such a precaution was a necessity. This way, the island stayed in the charts until 1974. A flying recognition campaign claimed there was a lack of appearance of that island, and Sandy Island was deleted from the charts. Google Maps appeared back in 2005, and the island, surprisingly, was there, even though it had been previously undiscovered. It got removed from Google Maps only in November of 2012. Now, there is nothing but black pixels, but there used to be a darkened sea area. Today, some specialists believe the whole situation with the island was just a copyright trap, which was a popular practice among cartographers back in the day. Those traps help cartographers protect their intellectual property. So, have you ever seen anything weird on Google Maps? The Amazon River travels through 9 South American countries at a length of over 4,000 miles. Still, it's impossible to cross it by a bridge. With the river being the main highway, traveling through this dense forest, and so few areas populated around the river, there's just no reason to have one. The river can rise up to 30 feet, and the river crossings that were only 3 miles wide can expand to over 30 miles in just a few short weeks in certain spots, making a bridge nearly impossible to build here. In New Zealand, in the coastal town of Mauriki, there are huge spherical boulders. Some rocks are 6.5 feet tall and weigh about 7 tons, as much as 10 cows. Ooh, there's a 10-cow boulder. Maori legend has it that these rocks are from the remains of the goods from a large shipwreck that happened hundreds of years ago. From a more scientific perspective, it's sand and gravel combined to form these giant boulders. Waves and winds give them a smooth, round appearance over time. The whole process might take millions of years. Indonesia's Kaiwan Ijen volcano is famous for a stunning turquoise-colored lake sitting at the top of the peak, but don't dip in. It's an acid lake. But its scariest part is the sulfuric gas is leaking out when lava flows freely, reaching temperatures hotter than 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. When those gases come in contact with the air, they combust into a spectacular electric blue flame. That's why the volcano has blue lava. The island of Surtsey, south of Iceland, was formed over 50 years ago by a volcanic eruption. It all began back in 1963 when a powerful volcanic eruption created one of the youngest islands on the planet. All sorts of bacteria, fungi, and molds began taking over the island, leading to numerous other animals finding their way here, like seals and birds. Birds and ocean waves deposited seeds all over the island. Sadly, the island's getting smaller now because of water and wind erosion. Located off the coast of Brazil, there's an island called… I'm a bit rusty on my Portuguese, so here it is on the screen. It looks perfectly untouched and pristine. Bad news? Dangerous snakes overrun it completely, so take a doctor with you in case you want to go there. Over 4,000 of the golden lancehead vipers inhabit this island. These 3-foot-long snakes are among the most venomous in the entire world. I think I'll skip that. Landing down under, you can see the Opera House, Uluru, lots of kangaroos, and catch the strangest wave of the world, Wave Rock in Western Australia. It's not made of water, but stone. It can be up to 50 feet tall and almost 300 feet long. It's especially incredible after rains in winter when the Western Australian wildflowers fill up the entire landscape. In Atlanta, there's a World of Coca-Cola museum. The formula for the secret recipe is in a large security vault, heavily guarded at all times. Only a handful of people can get through those vault doors. Since its creation in 1886, the company has kept it a secret for only the most honest employees. In 2006, a former worker tried to sell the formula to Pepsi, only for Pepsi to call the police and inform Coca-Cola. The Polka Dot Lakes is a must for anyone who is in British Columbia. After the summer's scorching heat evaporates the lake's water, it leaves behind yellow, blue, and green water spots. These pools are full of all sorts of minerals, like sodium, calcium, and magnesium sulfates that get concentrated in the pools. You can't get too close or even dip your feet into them. A fence protects the entire lake with a sign about how culturally and ecologically sensitive the area is. In Death Valley, California, there's a mystery of the sailing stones. Since the early 1900s, the mystery of how all these stones were seemingly moving by themselves across the desert floor baffled everyone. Some believe that the rocks move by thin pieces of ice around the stones pushed by winds after winter. No one ever saw any of these rocks moving until 2014. Scientists set time-lapse recorders, and the footage showed the rocks sliding along the ground over time. The Marble Caves in Chile, located in the beautiful area of Patagonia, formed from over 6,000 years of waves wearing down the rocks. The crystal blue walls reflect the vibrant turquoise water, making it perfect for kayaking. Walking in Chestnut Ridge Park in New York, one can see an eternal flame. What makes this one stand out, though, is it's underneath a waterfall. Occasionally, the flame will go out for short periods, but it will light up again. Sometimes it's thanks to certain hikers along the way. If you ever stop your car on a magnetic hill in New Brunswick, Canada, you'll see the car might start rolling backwards up the hill, all by itself. While it looks like it's moving the wrong way, this is just an illusion. There are several hills like this all around the world. What looks like an incline is the opposite, all because there's no horizon for perspective. The brightest bioluminescent bay in the world, called Puerto Mosquito, is located off the coast of Puerto Rico. The bay is named for the pirate Roberto Cofresi and his small boat El Mosquito, not after those annoying insects. During the summer months, you'll have glassy water at night with millions of tiny microorganisms bumping into each other and emitting blue light. The Chocolate Hills in the Philippines is a group of unusually shaped hills located in the middle of the island of Bohol in the Philippines. There are 1,000 to 2,000 discovered so far. They have nothing to do with chocolate at all, but they resemble the color after the dry season, when the grass turns from green to brown. In the northeastern part of Thailand, 466 miles away from Bangkok, is a 75-million-year-old rock formation sticking right out of the mountains. Their shapes look just like a pod of whales swimming together. No wonder this place is called Three Whale Rocks. Millions of years ago, this area was just a desert, but this land has changed quite dramatically during this time. These sandstone mountains were lifted up by plate tectonics, that's the shifting of the crust layers, called lithosphere, and erosion by the Mekong River, resulting in the strangely shaped rock formations we see today. Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia is the world's largest salt flat. At 4,050 square miles in size, it's twice as large as Grand Canyon National Park. After winter has passed, the salt lake is transformed into a beautiful giant sky-reflecting mirror between September and May. With salt all the way to the horizon, it creates an illusion of endlessness. The thin layer of water left over from ice melting creates a shimmering effect of the sky, making it one of the best places to visit in the world. The Catatumbo River in Venezuela might be the stormiest place in the world, with nearly 300 storm days a year. The lightning storms are so consistent, and they're predicted 3 months in advance. During the wet season in October, you might see 30 lightning flashes in a single minute. At sunset, strong winds flow around the 3 surrounding mountains, forming storm clouds over the water. When the water droplets of humid air collide with ice crystals from the cold air, the static charges cause a lightning storm that happens nearly every night. Off the southern tip of Japan lies the Yonaguni Formation. Archaeologists believe that the monument belongs to a fabled Pacific civilization, like Atlantis, that vanished beneath the waves thousands of years ago. If it's truly a lost civilization, or just nature having a little fun, this is the site to dive into. Features inside the structure resemble stonework like castles, temples, and a stadium, connected by roads and what seems to be large walls all the way around. There are even marks in the stone that appear to show quarry work, faded faces, and rocks sculpted into animal shapes. Some scientists believe that the symmetry of the stones is not as straight as reported. It appears solid rock rather than carved blocks, weathered down by all the water over many years. Plitvice Lakes National Park in Croatia is an interconnected chain of waterfalls, the tallest being 230 feet, and underground water channels, creating natural dams and lakes in such a picturesque environment. Found in the deep woodlands surrounded by meadows brimming with wildflowers, brown bears, gray wolves, lynx, deer, and plenty of rare bird species for birdwatchers call these 115 square miles of the national park home. Now, history teaches us that the supercontinent existed a long time ago, around 300 to 273 million years back. At that time, all the continents on Earth were buddies and hanging out together. They formed an amazing crew called Pangaea, or Pangaea if you're feeling fancy. The name comes from a Greek word which means all the Earth. Pangaea also had a massive water neighbor called Panthalassa. So our entire world was a huge piece of land surrounded by a huge piece of ocean. The megacontinent looked like a giant sea, stretching between the tippy top and bottom of our planet. But as stories go, things change. About 200 million years ago, in the early Jurassic epoch, like dinosaur times, Pangaea decided to throw a breakaway party. Forget about the old ideas of continents just drifting around like big icebergs. It split up into smaller chunks, forming the continents we know today. Oh, and it created the Atlantic and Indian Oceans as a bonus. Pangaea's tale was first told by a German weather expert named Alfred Wegener in 1912. But how did he learn about something that happened so long ago? Imagine the Earth's core as a big, cozy fireplace, giving off heat. This heat creates special swirling currents in the Earth's outer shell. We can think of it as the Earth's crust, which looks like a big puzzle with many puzzle pieces. The hot currents make these puzzle pieces, called crustal plates, move around. Sometimes they push apart, sometimes they crash into each other, and sometimes they slide past one another. It's like a fantastic dance party that goes on beneath our feet. One day, Wegener looked at the shapes of the continents and thought that, hey, those coastlines of South America and Africa kind of fit together. And they really did. So he imagined that way back, all of the continents hung out together as one big landmass. But he couldn't just go and say that without any proof. So how do we know Pangaea really was a thing? Well, there are some clues that brought us to this amazing discovery. One clue is like when you put a puzzle together and the pieces fit just right. Take a look at the shapes of today's continents. You'll notice that they could fit together almost like a perfect match. Obviously, their shapes changed over time. It happened millions of years ago, and since then, the shores of continents have been washed by waters for years. But even so, we can still see how well they fit together. Another clue comes from checking out fossils. We know that ancient animals left a lot of fossils behind. That's how we learn their history and what species there were. But when scientists compared fossils found on different continents, they found something interesting. These fossils look similar. Surprisingly, they belong to the same groups of animals, even though they were far apart. It's not like these animals could swim across the ocean on their four paws. And it's unlikely that this particular type of animal originated in two places at the same time. And finally, the mountains. Imagine exploring underwater and finding huge mountains in the oceans. These underwater ranges and deep trenches are like scars from when Earth's tectonic plates moved around. They serve as another proof that the continents are part of something bigger. When you look at these things together, you get a pretty clear picture. The Earth's continents were once huddled together in the supercontinent. They've since gone their separate ways, but the memories of their grand adventure are still written in the shapes of coastlines, the rocks they left behind, and many more. But it's obvious to us now. At the time of Wegener's discovery, there were different ideas flying around. Some folks thought that the continents sank down to make the oceans, but Wegener had a different take. He thought that the continents are always on the move. He even came up with a fancy phrase, continental drift, to explain it. Later, he was joined by another scientist named Alexander du Toit. He added a little twist to the story, suggesting there were two original continents, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. But the real party didn't start until the 1960s, when scientists figure out the secret ingredient in this recipe, plate tectonics. And finally, this theory explained everything Wegener and du Toit talked about. Wegener's theory was proven correct after 50 years. As time passed, we learned more and more about our planet. We found out that the Earth used to have multiple supercontinents. Before Pangaea, there was a megacontinent called Rodinia around 1 billion years ago. And later on, Pannotia joined the scene about 600 million years ago. What's interesting is that the continental drift story is far from over. Our continents are always on the move. Africa is giving Europe a friendly bump, and Australia is playing a game of bumper cars with Southeast Asia. You know what's on the horizon? Another supercontinent. So, how will this next supercontinent come together? Well, there are 4 major possibilities: Novo Pangaea, Pangaea Ultima, Orica, and Amasia. These might sound like superhero names, but they're actually ways the puzzle pieces could fit. Let's look at them all. First, Novo Pangaea. You know how there's the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Pacific Ocean on the other? Well, if these oceans keep doing what they're doing now, the Atlantic will keep opening up while the Pacific squeezes in. If that happens, the Americas, North and South America, will give each other a big high five. And Antarctica, that icy land way down south, will join the fun too. It'll be drifting northward. Next, Pangaea Ultima. In the future, the Atlantic Ocean might get tired of being so wide. It might decide to slow down and shrink a bit. The Americas and the northward drifting Antarctica will probably crash into Africa and Europe. And just like that, a brand new supercontinent forms. There are these spots where the ocean floor is sliding underneath the land. It's like a secret underwater passage. These spots are called subduction zones. So if these secret tunnels will be spreading and spreading all along the east coast of the Americas, Europe, and Africa might come together again, and they'd form a supercontinent. This supercontinent would be surrounded by the Pacific Ocean. The next possible supercontinent is Orica. In this scenario, the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans might decide to take a nap and close up. But don't worry, because when one door closes, another opens. In this case, a whole new ocean would pop up to replace them. Imagine a big crack in the ground cutting through Asia, like a zipper opening up. This crack is called the Pan-Asian Rift, and it would become a brand new ocean. With this new ocean comes a new supercontinent, Orica. Australia is currently drifting northwards, like it's trying to find a nice spot at the center of our planet. East Asia and the Americas might join in from both sides. After that, Europe and Africa might link up with the Americas, and boom, Orica. And finally, Amasia. It might form if some of the tectonic plates go north. They can take continents like Africa and Australia along for the ride. They'll be hanging out around the North Pole. All the continents except Antarctica might come together. And even though they might gather around the North Pole, they won't close off the oceans. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans would still be open for business. How this grand reunion happens depends on the Earth's tectonic movements. So far, we believe that Novo Pangea is the most likely scenario. It also depends on what exactly happened to Pangea after it broke apart. And when the new supercontinent appears, what's going to happen with the weather? How will the ocean behave? And what about the animals and plants? These questions all light up our minds. Who knows? Maybe someday our descendants will look at the world map and see this incredible journey come full circle. So keep asking curious questions and stay tuned for the next 100 million years.
The Easter Island giant heads are so popular that they even have their own emoji. Their true meaning has been a mystery for hundreds of years. But it looks like we at least know how they were built and transported to their permanent location. The Moai statues consist of 3 parts: a large yellow body, a red hat or top knot, and white inset eyes with a coral iris. Around 1,000 of them were created. The main bodies of most of the statues were made out of volcanic tuff from a local quarry in what used to be a volcano. The material is easy to carve, but not so easy to transport. That's probably why researchers found over 300 unfinished moai back in the quarry. The rest of them stand in various locations, facing the villages as if watching over the locals. So, it looks like the statues were carved lying on their backs. Then, their creators detached them from the rock, moved them down slope, and set them in a vertical position to finish the work. Once it was done, it was time to get the statue to its platform. Now, if you've ever moved houses, you know how physically hard it is. So, imagine having to move a statue that is about half as heavy as a house without a car or any modern equipment for a distance of 3 miles. The locals must have invented some original way of doing it, and scientists tried to recreate it to guess what it was. They tried pulling moai replicas on wooden sleds. They thought someone could have used palm trees for that purpose, but this theory has been debunked. The most successful experiment so far was wielding ropes to rock the statue down the road in a standing position. This method sounds real because the local Rapa Nui legends mention that the moai walked from the quarry. And, of course, they needed a good road to get there. In the early 20th century, researcher Catherine Rutledge identified an 800-year-old road network on the island. It was a bunch of pathways around 15 feet wide going from the quarry. She thought that those roads were ceremonial and not built just for the statues. She wasn't a famous scientist back then, so others mostly ignored the theory. Several decades later, famous Norwegian adventurer and archaeologist Thor Heyerdahl published his theory. He mentioned that the roads were built exclusively to transport the moai, and some of the statues were dropped along the roads for some reason. But in 2010, researchers found that the statues weren't randomly dropped. They actually reached their final destinations, as they were all set on hidden platforms. Plus, the road floor was U-shaped, so pulling massive statues along them wouldn't be easy. You can still find roughly 15.5 miles of these roads on the island and see them from satellite images. And it looks like Catherine Rutledge was right about them. The roads were probably built for pilgrims to a sacred volcano, and the moai standing by them were sort of signposts. Halfway across the world in southern England lies another mystery made of stone, a massive sound illusion, a symbol of unity, a burial ground, or more. Scientists are still debating the purpose of Stonehenge. It took Neolithic builders around 1,500 years to construct this beauty made of roughly 100 stones standing upright in a circle. Millions of tourists come to see it every year, and heritage protectors were worried about the modern road snaking close to the landmark. That modern road is now sunk into the ground below the grass level. And even though archaeologists assumed they could find an older road under it, they didn't have any high hopes. But when they took off a layer of asphalt, they noticed two parallel ditches that were nearly perpendicular to the road. The ditches connected the shortened sections of the avenue. That's what the archaeologists call the ancient pathway leading up to Stonehenge. It proves that the ancient people used to visit the monument for their purposes and probably some ceremonies. Another interesting find during a dry summer was 3 dry patch marks within the stone circle. It looks like they were left there by 3 massive boulders. So Stonehenge could have been a full circle once. In 2021, archaeologists found a Roman road submerged in the Venetian lagoon. The fact that it runs there on the bottom for nearly 4,000 feet is proof that the Romans were here before sea levels rose and flooded the area. It supports the theory that there was an important settlement here centuries before Venice was founded at the spot in the 5th century CE. The ancient Romans were great at many things, and one of them was building roads. And it looks like they weren't afraid to work on the trickiest terrain. Scans have shown that the ancient road was built right on the beach, and it requires some serious skills. Imagine a village from over 1,000 years ago frozen in time. There's still half-eaten food on the tables and personal things left in a rush. It's all preserved so well because it's covered by volcanic ash. Researchers found this village in 2011 in modern-day El Salvador. They believe there was a mass celebration in a Maya village called Seren over 1,400 years ago. The whole village was there, preparing the main temple for a ritual when a nearby volcano erupted. The 200-plus residents had no time to rush back to their homes. To save their lives, they had to flee the plaza and run south on a raised road called Sakbe. They managed to escape from the plumes of volcanic ash. In addition to being a superhero and saving all the people, the road had another cool feature. All Sakbe roads had an outer layer of stones, but this one was made of ash. Ironic, isn't it? It proves that the Maya people didn't only use stones to build their roads. Archaeologists discovered several coins in Jerusalem when they were excavating an old street. When they saw the minting dates, they realized the road was built when Pontius Pilate was the Roman governor of Judea. Since he was the local ruler, it's almost clear that he gave the order to build the road. The pilgrims most likely used this road to reach the Temple Mount for worship. The pathway, which was laid with over 10,000 tons of limestone, was almost as broad as a London bus is long. It had been there for 2,000 years. It's not common that you find such a luxurious road, and it's not clear why a Roman governor would spend so much money on the road. It was probably his attempt to make the city's population like him. Plus, it was a great way to show he had both money and influence. The Old North Trail is an ancient highway that the inhabitants of North America used for 10,000 years, first on foot, then with dogs, and finally with horses. The first travelers moved around the continent down its paths for thousands of miles long before the first Europeans arrived, and even during the last ice age. They used it to carry trade goods, visit relatives, find a mate, or just explore. Researchers keep finding evidence that the stories and legends of the Blackfoot Indians about this trail are real. And it could be even the road that served one of the most massive human migrations. The people who crossed from Asia on the Bering Land Bridge about 15,000 years ago and settled in North America might have used the ice-free corridor along the Rockies, which later became a part of the trail. The Nakasendo Highway was built in the 17th century during the Edo period of Japanese history to link Kyoto and Tokyo. The 310-mile-long road runs across mountain ranges and down onto the plain. It was one of the 5 main roads used by the feudal lords and their families to travel to the capital. There were 69 post stations on the route where travelers could stay overnight. The road was built for horses and pedestrians, as the Japanese didn't use carts. You can still walk parts of the route.
Now, we wouldn't call this island mystical unless there were tales of giants living here. The island of Gozo in Malta is the backdrop of an ancient legend. Malta is an island country located in the Mediterranean Sea, just south of Europe. It's a very strategically located archipelago. Throughout history, it was ruled by many different societies, such as the Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, and Carthaginians. One cold night, thousands of years ago, a farmer noticed the sky turn orange, then red, when he heard a loud thump. Although the ground seemed to be moving, this wasn't an earthquake. When he looked toward the woods, he saw a giant silhouette, taller than the trees. As he fearfully approached, he realized it was a woman, a giant woman. She introduced herself as Sunsuna. Unlike the terrible giants of many tales, Sunsuna didn't want to exterminate the human race. She was loving and caring. She told the farmer that she and her people could help protect their land from invaders. The locals were pretty interested in this offer. Since Malta is located in an important commercial route, it was constantly being invaded. The story says that Sunsuna settled in Malta, and sooner rather than later, she was moving things around. And when I say things, I mean monoliths. Sunsuna carried huge stones on her shoulder to build a magnificent temple called Gigantia, which means place of giants. She even did this while holding her half-giant, half-human kid on the other shoulder. Some say Sunsuna lived exclusively on beans and honey, although others replaced honey with water. The funniest bit here is that Malta is the 10th smallest country in the world, but it somehow managed to host giants. Hey, go figure. The temple looked like a giant game of Tetris, with some stones weighing as much as 20 elephants. Some of these monolithic rocks are so heavy, scholars guess it would take 50 men working together to lift just one stone. Now, as much as this is entertaining, humans never proved giants were real, so this story couldn't be true. There's a brief mention of a species of giants called the Nephilim in some ancient texts. The Nephilims would have been terrible giants that wreaked havoc on the earth and only survived until the Great Flood. But nobody ever found real proof of this species really existing on Earth, until this came along. The world of Maltese archaeology unearthed quite a few shocking things in the past years. One of them are known as the Hypogeum skulls. Hypogeum is the Greek word for underground, and this incredible site was discovered in the first decade of the 20th century. Back then, Malta's National Museum director received an important phone call. Someone had accidentally dug some impressive bones and asked him to come check it out. The Hypogeum looked like an underground city, filled with mazes and rooms that stretched along multiple floors. They were all made with similar limestones as the Maltese temples above ground. The Hypogeum was filled with important relics and artifacts. Scientists quickly understood that the Hypogeum was built as a type of final resting place for locals. So, along with skulls, they found a lot of bones and skeletons. One of these artifacts were skulls, But these weren't regular human skulls. Rather, they were of the elongated type. To make matters worse, these skulls were hidden from the public for years. People started to talk and created a bunch of theories behind it. The truth is that this discovery was a turning point for Maltese archaeology, although scientists didn't know what to do with it. Some wondered if these skulls were natural or manipulated, since they knew some cultures in the world used head binds to alter their skulls. Other scientists threw in the hypothesis of little gray people or even the legendary giants. Some say that the elongated skulls could have been sculptures that worshipped otherworldly deities. There was no way to confirm any of these theories. So the question remained: who were the builders of Malta's megalithic temples? Now let's take a look at what scientists know. The Maltese megalithic temples have been standing strong since 3500 BCE, which is even older than the pyramids of Egypt. The main dilemma here is that these temples were built even before we invented writing, yet they required advanced technological skills to exist. The Gigantea Temple seems too absurd to have been built by humans. The South Temple has a corridor with 4 oval rooms on the sides, looking like a big shamrock leaf. In one of these rooms, scientists found altars decorated with spiral patterns. It looked like an altar of some sort, indicating early Maltese people used them for ritualistic purposes. The North Temple is similar but smaller, with a very low entrance that makes people crouch down to get inside. You get it? You need to bow down to their deities in order to get into this sacred place. I mean, one can't help but wonder about the secret reasons these ancient builders had to build such a huge temple. I'm thinking they probably cast one of Daenerys' dragons to move the monoliths around. Yeah, I'm joking here. But hey, remember the entrance to King's Landing? Yup, the series used the Medina Gates in Malta as the exterior of King's Landing during Episode 3 of Season 1. Anyways, back to the giants. The ritualistic theory of the whole thing won a few points when archaeologists uncovered these mysterious figures. They're popularly known as fat ladies. These tiny statues have round bodies and faces that show how much they enjoyed life. They kind of look like a miniature Sunsana, the giantess we talked about. Scientists believe these were statues that celebrated well-being and prosperity. It does prove that the people of the time had advanced craftsmanship skills, and they were pretty intentional with their constructions and art manifestations. One of these statues is known as the Sleeping Lady. This Neolithic piece of art depicts the figure of a large woman lying on her side sleeping. After studying it deeper, scientists guessed this statue was meant to represent the Great Reaper. It was found in the hypogeum, which we now know is a huge resting place. This specific statue is different from all the other fat ladies, starting with the hair and the embroidered skirt. Then there's this statue. This is supposed to represent an 8-foot-tall woman and the rim of her skirt. She was discovered in the most unusual of ways. A farmer was trying to plow his field, but he kept hitting large blocks of stone. All the way back in 1915, the farmer called Malta's National Museum director and asked him to come check it out. Some think this is all the proof you need to confirm that Sunsana was real. Others aren't all that sure. But that's not all. The place where this giant statue was buried revealed one of Malta's most impressive archaeological sites, the Tarsian Temples. The temples were made from limestone blocks. Some are 20 feet tall and weigh around 20 tons. Zamet, the museum director, kept digging and discovered multiple sites made of megalithic stones. All of them supposedly built by Stone Age farmers, all stranded on a remote island in the Mediterranean Sea thousands of years ago. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, look at these temples in Manidra. This is probably the world's earliest calendar. On the equinoxes, the sun passes directly through the main doorway, straight down the central axis. On the solstices, there are 2 superb variations. During the summer solstice, the rays fall on the edge of the megalith to the left of the doorway, and during the winter, the rays fall to the right side of the doorway. It's astronomical precision at its finest. And what about the structures in the Hall Tarsian that we've already talked about? This complex is the oldest one in all of Malta. It was built with the purpose of doing animal offerings to deities. Scientists confirm this by unearthing numerous animal bones buried in the soil. They also found a great collection of spirals, indicating that the locals also used this temple for ritualistic purposes. Overall, there are 7 megalithic temples in Malta, each more impressive than the other. Scholars keep on digging to see if they can uncover the truth, much like researchers do with the pyramids of Egypt, the lost Mayan cities in the Americas, and other sites.